One of the most important concepts in chemistry is the concept of the mole. You will see this anywhere, almost every single problem in chemistry, especially when you go past first year or even first term of your chemistry course. You'll be seeing this all over the place. So it's very important that you develop a good understanding of it. So the mole concept is basically a way of counting a lot of things. So if you're familiar with what an atom is, it's a very, very small particle. And so usually, well, when you're doing experiments, well, you're not going to be using individual atoms or things, or let's say 10 atoms or 100 atoms. Usually you're going to be using tens of thousands, trillions of even atoms. For example, 1 gram of hydrogen is in the magnitude of 10 to the power of 23 atoms. So when we're trying to represent individual atoms, well, how do we count using a large number? Well, the mole operates in a very similar way as other terms, like for example, if you think of the word a dozen means 12, and the mole concept functions in a very similar way. The way that it works is whenever I say I have 1 mole of something, let's say 1 mole of salt, well, that means I have a very large number, and in this case, this large number is 6.022 times 10 to the power of 23 pieces of individual salt. And so if you can see here, it kind of functions in a similar way as a dozen. For example, if I were to say I have 1 dozen salt, well, that probably doesn't make sense grammatically. But if I were to say I have 1 dozen salt, well, that means I have 12 salt, individual pieces of salt. And so hopefully from here you can see how this is more applicable to chemistry. Whereas if you want to say, for example, I have, let's say, like 4 grams of H2 gas, well, and you want to say, well, how many molecules of that is? How many individual small pieces? Well, you probably wouldn't say I have 12.044 times 10 to the power of 23. You just say, well, let's look here. I have just 2 moles of H2. And another thing that's very important that you have to memorize is this number right here. And this number is known as Avogadro's constant. And it's developed by this man called Amedeo Avogadro. And that is the basics of the mole concept.